Mother of the 5-year-old boy who was found in a suitcase will be in court tomorrow, and we have new information tonight about what was going on before her capture. Dejaune Anderson, accused of murdering her son Cairo Jordan, stuffing him in a suitcase and dumping it in southern Indiana. Wave News reporter David Ochoa takes a closer look at Anderson's actions leading up to Cairo's death.
Yeah, in the months before 5-year-old Cairo's death, Anderson posted several times online calling him a demon and claiming he's actually 100 years old. Days after, she wrote that she was going to write a book about living with a demonic child. She continued to post in the following weeks about children being avatars for evil beings.
All right, ma'am, you are under arrest, okay?
A trooper asks for the child's name again, and Dejaune tells him Cairo's name is Jason Jordan. Dawn Coleman says she's the child's aunt and can take care of him. The trooper makes a call and comes back with this.
I'm gonna call Lieutenant. Okay. And see what you want to do with me. She's the sister. Just get the child, Jason, with you, and then get him up to the 33 at a hotel for the night until y'all.
Thank you for watching Why I Killed You TV. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and share to this particular video. Today, guys, we're going to talk about little Cairo Jordan, who was only 5 years old at the time of his death. He was actually murdered by his mother and his mother's friend, Don Coleman. Don Coleman was 41 years old, and she was from Shreveport, Louisiana. His mother was 38 years old. At the time of her arrest, she was arrested in Arcadia, California. The crazy thing about this, which I do not understand, he had a father that wanted custody of him. He had a father that loved him. However, the mother would not allow little Cairo to be with the father. Okay, so she ran away with little Cairo, and the mother was trying to raise him along with his friend Don Coleman. Both of them had a demonic belief that little Cairo was some type of demon and that he was 100 years old and something had to be done about him. Thank God, when they did kill him, his body was stuffed into a suitcase, and shortly after them dumping his body in the woods, it was found by a man in the woods. It just happened to be in the woods, and he found little Cairo. Unfortunately, he was dead. He found little Cairo's body inside of a suitcase. So police were hot on their trails. They were hot on their trails, hot on little Cairo's mother and little Cairo's mother's friend, Don Coleman. We're gonna go ahead and run this clip, guys. This is crazy.
They hate you. You're gonna die. I don't want to do this.
Late on the evening of April 16th, 2022, a mushroom hunter in Washington County, Indiana, stumbled across something that would change everything. At first, it looked like any other forgotten item, an old bright blue suitcase sitting alone in the woods, the kind of thing someone might have left behind by accident. But what this man found inside would leave him and the world utterly stunned. He opened the suitcase. Inside, wrapped in black trash bags, was the lifeless body of a child.
Jeez.
No signs of life. But something about the way the child lay there, so small, so vulnerable, seemed almost like a plea for help. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. But this wasn't just any child. This was a child whose life had been tragically cut short in the most unimaginable way.
I really hate doing these videos on these kids, man. This is senseless bullshit. Why do you do this, man? I don't get it. I don't get this. Look at this little boy. He was only 5 at the time.
And the story of how this innocent little boy, just 5 years old, ended up in that suitcase is one of betrayal, horror, and a chilling belief system that nobody saw coming. At first, no one knew his name, no one came forward, no missing child reports. His body lay unidentified for months. And yet, every detail of his final days would slowly unravel a disturbing truth about the people closest to him. What happened to him? How did this child end up abandoned, hidden away in a suitcase? The truth was darker than anyone could imagine. Cairo Amar Jordan was born on October 24, 2016, in Atlanta, Georgia, to Dejaune Anderson, who was 37 years old at the time, and Vincent Jordan, who was 38 years old. From the moment he entered the world, Cairo was a joyful child. He had an infectious smile and a boundless energy that filled any room he entered. He loved dinosaurs more than anything, and you could often find him playing with his little toy figures, imagining grand adventures in his own world. His paternal grandmother, who saw him often, described him as a sweet and energetic boy. He was always running around, playing and laughing. But despite his warmth, Cairo didn't have many children his age to play with, and his world was mostly shaped by the adults around him, especially his mother, Dejaune. However, things weren't always smooth in the family. Cairo's parents, Dejaune and Vincent, had a rocky relationship that began to deteriorate by 2017. What started as minor disagreements escalated into a bitter custody battle, and that was just the beginning. As the battle grew fiercer, Dejaune's actions became more concerning. She began to distance Cairo from his father. Vincent, who desperately wanted to be a part of his son's life, found it increasingly difficult to see him. Dejaune blocked him from visiting, making excuses, and even threatening to call the police whenever Vincent showed up to pick up Cairo.
Okay, what was the problem? Why can't he see his child? What is the problem?
Then, things took a darker turn. In 2017, Dejaune disappeared with Cairo. She moved around constantly, keeping her whereabouts secret. She cut off all contact with Vincent's family, and no one knew where she and Cairo were. Vincent was left searching for his son, not knowing where he was or how to reach him. The pain of losing contact with his child was unbearable, but the worst was yet to come. Nobody suspected how deep the secrets ran. No one knew the toll it was taking on little Cairo, and no one could have predicted the devastating turn his life would take in the coming years. But there is one other person in the picture who is very crucial to this story: Dawn Elaine Coleman. Dawn wasn't just a casual acquaintance or a distant friend. She had been Dejaune Anderson's longtime friend, and eventually her accomplice in the darkest parts of this tale.
Oh my God.
Over the years, Dawn and Dejaune's lives became increasingly intertwined. The two women didn't just share a friendship, they shared a life of chaos and instability. They moved around often, staying in various places, primarily in and around Atlanta, Georgia. For Dejaune, it seemed like she couldn't stay in one place for long without things falling apart. And when that happened, Dawn was always there, a constant presence, often looking after Cairo when his mother wasn't around.
So you can't offer your child any stability, but his father can, and you won't let him have him. What's up with that?
So, on the night of March 12th, 2022, Dejaune Anderson and her longtime friend, Dawn Coleman, were speeding down the interstate in South Carolina. Inside their 2019 Dodge Challenger, 5-year-old Cairo Jordan was sitting in the back seat, likely unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. Dejaune was driving recklessly, her speed well over the limit, 30 miles per hour above what was safe or legal. A South Carolina Highway Patrol officer noticed the violation and attempted to pull them over, but Dejaune had other plans. She slammed her foot down on the gas, initiating a high-speed chase that stretched for over 30 miles. The officers pursued them for what seemed like an eternity, their sirens blaring through the night. Despite the officers' attempts to stop them, Dejaune refused to slow down. However, her escape came to an abrupt halt when the Challenger ran out of gas. The car coasted to a stop, and Dejaune and Dawn were trapped, their flight coming to an end in the middle of the road. When the officers approached, Dejaune and Dawn didn't comply immediately. It wasn't until one of the officers began smashing the window with a baton that Dawn finally opened the door. She immediately shouted, "There's a baby in here!" The officers moved quickly, pulling both women from the car and handcuffing them. But when it came time to identify the child in the back seat, Dejaune gave the wrong name. She called him Jordan, not Cairo, deliberately obscuring his identity. Dawn, in a desperate attempt to cover for Dejaune, claimed they were sisters, a statement that was, of course, a lie. Both women were arrested on charges of child endangerment and speeding.
Yep.
They had placed Cairo in a dangerous situation, putting him at risk in a high-speed chase that could have ended in tragedy. But this arrest was only the beginning of a disturbing sequence of events that would unfold.
On a blustery Saturday night in March, a South Carolina state trooper said this 2019 Dodge Challenger was going more than 30 miles over the speed limit. With sirens on, he chased for 30 miles until...
You think he ran out of gas?
They ran out of gas, and troopers used a pit maneuver.
Pit.
Eventually, the Challenger died.
Put your hands up!
They surrounded the car and repeatedly asked the driver, Dejaune Anderson, to open the doors.
We're gonna bust the glass!
When the doors finally opened, troopers took out Don Coleman first.
Oh no, there's a baby right there. I don't have nothing.
Then they pulled out Dejaune Anderson. With the two in handcuffs, they turned to the 5-year-old in the back seat.
What's his name? Jordan?
Cairo Jordan.
Here, hold your jacket, okay? Back out. Let's try to get you out of here. Y'all just ran out of gas.
Yes, that's why we were trying to hurry up and get
the Georgia.
Yes.
All right, ma'am, you are under arrest, okay?
A trooper asks for the child's name again, and Dejaune tells him Cairo's name is Jason Jordan. Don Coleman says she's the child's aunt and can take care of him. The trooper makes a call and comes back with this.
I'm gonna call Lieutenant. Okay, and see what you want to do with me. She's the sister. Just get the child, Jason, with you, and get him up to the 33 at a hotel for the night until y'all got.
But Dejaune's time in jail didn't last long. The following day, she paid bail and was released from custody, but it was clear her behavior was becoming more erratic with each passing day. While behind bars, Dawn took charge, becoming the caretaker for Cairo once again. She made sure he was with her, checking into a Hilton hotel for the night with the young boy, pretending everything was fine. But despite her calm outward actions, the reality was far darker. When Dejaune was out of jail, she was expected to appear in court for her child endangerment charges. However, in a move that would set off alarm bells for those watching, she failed to show up. Instead of appearing before a judge, Dejaune went on the run, disappearing with Cairo and Dawn, as if the consequences of her actions had never existed. But 19 days after her arrest in South Carolina, Dejaune Anderson found herself in yet another confrontation with the law, this time in Louisville, Kentucky. It seemed like trouble followed her wherever she went, and this time her behavior would escalate even further. On March 31st, 2022, Dejaune walked into the Oxmoor Mall in Louisville. Inside, she wandered through the Von Moore store, quietly slipping clothes into a bag without paying. She wasn't trying to hide it. The loss prevention officers spotted her immediately and quickly made the...
This chick is unstable. I still don't understand why this little boy cannot stay with his father. You're not stable, you know it. Why he can't be with his daddy?
Their way over. Dejaune, however, wasn't going to comply. As the officers attempted to stop her, she panicked. In a fit of rage, she lashed out and punched one of the security guards right in the face. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was a violent act. The situation quickly escalated, with Dejaune now charged with robbery and assault. She had gone from evading the law to aggressively fighting her way out of it. But the worst part? Cairo, her innocent 5-year-old son, was once again in the middle of it all.
What happens in this video led to Dejaune Anderson's arrest. You can see security at Oxmoor Center pull her aside, suspecting her of shoplifting. Then, watch closely, she punches the guard square in the face. This happened on March 31st.
As Dejaune was arrested and taken into custody, Don Coleman was left to care for Cairo. Once again, she took responsibility for him, as the two women's chaotic lives continued to intersect. Dawn checked into yet another hotel, this time with Cairo in tow, keeping a low profile, while Dejaune faced the consequences of her actions. After spending just over a week in custody, Dejaune was surprisingly released. The judge allowed her to go free on personal recognizance, meaning she didn't have to pay bail. Instead, it was essentially a written promise to show up in court and refrain from committing any more crimes. But beyond this, Dejaune and Dawn had beliefs that were disturbingly twisted. Through their social media posts, it became clear that they were deeply entangled in a web of demonic beliefs, exorcisms, hexes, and rituals. These were not just idle thoughts. They were core to their actions, shaping how they treated Cairo, their innocent 5-year-old. Dejaune, under the name Katu Katu, began sharing these disturbing ideas on her Facebook page as early as December 5, 2021. In one post, she openly declared, "My son's name is Cyo Aman Jordan." She continued by saying, "I offer reversal spell, protection spell, activating your DNA, exorcism, hex, and curse." It was a disturbing admission of how far her beliefs had twisted. Then, in January 2022,
So we got Miss Cleo in the house. We got a nutcase watching this little boy who's only 5 years old with her nutcase girlfriend. Crazy.
Dawn, also known by her social media handle Ankh Kek, she spoke of rituals and blood magic, hinting at a deeper involvement in something dark. "I'm using my blood for this ritual," she wrote, signaling her involvement in practices that were hard to ignore. As the months passed, the posts from both women grew increasingly bizarre. On February 19th, 2022, Dejaune posted another message, revealing just how entrenched her beliefs were. "Can't wait to tell my story. I had to raise my frequency, heal myself, heal my ancestors, heal the universe, heal Gaia, to exorcise my very powerful demonic force from within my son."
What are you talking about?
She continued, saying she had weakened his powers through our blood, and claimed Cairo was a 100-year-old demon trapped in a child's body. It was becoming more and more clear. Cairo to them was not a child, but something evil, a being that needed to be controlled.
Jesus.
Dejaune even went as far as to say, "I know you can choose your soul with no questions asked." Her words were a cry for help, but no one saw them for what they were, signs of deep delusion. These posts were not just words. They were a reflection of their treatment of Cairo, their perceptions of him being demonic rather than a helpless child in need of love and care. As April 2022 rolled in, Dejaune's posts continued, revealing the growing desperation of a mother who had lost touch with reality.
You think?
April 8th, 2022. Dawn posted a chilling message on her social media account stating, "Just because the avatar is of what we call a child does not mean that it is actually a child. There are beings that are here that are not supposed to be here. You better check to see if the children you think are children actually have souls." Her words were cryptic, but they carried an unmistakable meaning. She and Dejaune no longer saw Cairo as a child, but as an avatar, a vessel for something malevolent. Then, on April 11th, Dejaune was released from jail, and almost immediately she went back to her Facebook account, posting yet another message. "Just got out of a jail mission, had to do some healing and killing." Her words seemed to speak directly to her delusional beliefs, as if she had been undergoing some twisted rituals in the prison. Her posts were no longer just about Cairo. They were about her belief in healing and killing, phrases that could only suggest how detached from reality she had become. The following days brought even more unsettling posts. On April 12th, Dejaune tweeted at a Catholic priest, Father Vincent Lampert, "Good day, sir. I need to speak with you urgently. I have survived the death attacks from my 5-year-old throughout the 5 years he has been alive. I have his real name, and he is 100 years old." It was a desperate cry for help, But at the same time, it was further proof that Dejaune had lost touch with the real Cairo, choosing instead to live in a world of demons and fantasy. By April 14th, Dejaune and Dawn's cell phone data and GPS records showed they were in Washington County, Indiana, about 45 minutes from Louisville, where they had been staying. They spent nearly an hour on Holder Road, the exact location where, just a few days later, Cairo's body would be discovered. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a deliberate act, and the timing was too suspicious to ignore. The very next day, on April 15th, Dejaune posted for the last time on her Facebook account, "This is a whole demon in a child body. Why do you think she needs a cigarette? Losing energy, huh? 64 years old in a child's body." She referred to Cairo as a demon, clearly in the grips of her delusion. By this point, it was obvious that she had lost all perception of reality.
You think?
Cairo was no longer a child to her. He was merely a vessel to be disposed of. As Dejaune's posts continued to turn into incoherent ramblings, Cairo's fate had already been sealed. His mother's delusions and twisted beliefs would lead him to a tragic and senseless death. April 16th, 2022. The discovery that would shake the community to its core began with an ordinary day for Jeffrey Meredith, a local mushroom hunter. Around 7 p.m., Jeffrey was out searching the wooded area near his property, looking for mushrooms, something he had done many times before. But this time, something else caught his eye. A bright blue suitcase abandoned in the forest. Curious, he approached it, unaware of the horror hidden inside. The suitcase had a "Welcome to the Fabulous Las Vegas" design, an odd, almost gaudy detail in such a remote location. He bent down, unzipped the suitcase and opened it, only to find a black trash bag and a pillow on top. When he removed the pillow, he found the lifeless body of a small child, Cairo Jordan, his eyes wide open, staring back at him as if pleading for help. Jeffrey was frozen for a moment, the realization sinking in that he had just discovered a child's body. In an instant, his hands reached for his phone, and without hesitation, he dialed 911. He was in shock, unable to comprehend what he had just seen, but knowing that help was needed immediately. As he spoke to the dispatcher, he tried to stay calm, but couldn't help feeling the weight of the moment. A child's life had ended in the most horrific of ways, and he had just found the evidence of it. When the police arrived, they confirmed the worst. Cairo Jordan, a small boy from Atlanta, Georgia, was dead, his life tragically stolen from him. The most chilling part? There was no missing person report for him. No one had come forward to say they were looking for him. No one knew who he was.
I'll never forget that words that state trooper told me. There's not going to be a moment lost that we won't be looking and trying to help this little feller. And he promised me, and he came through, that he would find. It feels like the weight of the world went off my shoulder because I got his name now. I did not want to go out of this world without knowing that little boy's name, because when I first saw that little feller's face, it was like he was screaming help to me. The only help I know to do is to call 911, and that's what I did.
And it worked.
Yeah.
You could just hear it in his voice. That has to be so devastating to find something like that.
God for the Indiana State Troopers.
At this point, the child's identity remained unknown. Cairo's body had been discarded so carelessly that even the police had no way to identify him right away. The community was shaken to its core, and in a strange, heartbreaking turn of events, a local memorial service was held for the child they didn't know, but would never forget. The people of Salem, Indiana, organized a service to honor this child, calling him Angel, because, as one of the community members later said, he was an angel, unknown to all but now known to us. But the investigation into Cairo Jordan's death took a crucial turn when authorities analyzed security footage from nearby homes. The footage showed Dejaune Anderson's car, a 2019 Dodge Challenger, driving down Holder Road near the area where Cairo's suitcase was found. This was no coincidence. It placed Dejaune at the scene just days before the suitcase was discovered. By June 29, 2022, fingerprint analysis soon confirmed what investigators had suspected. The prints found on the trash bags inside the suitcase matched Dejaune Anderson and her accomplice, Dawn Coleman. This was a major breakthrough. But while this was a clear connection to the crime, the most chilling part of the investigation came when the autopsy report was released. It confirmed that Cairo's death wasn't caused by any obvious physical trauma. Instead, he had died from dehydration and an electrolyte imbalance, most likely due to gastroenteritis, a severe stomach bug that caused him to vomit and suffer from diarrhea, ultimately leading to severe dehydration. The time of death was just as haunting. Cairo had been left to suffer while severely ill, without the care and attention a child so desperately needed. He wasn't murdered in an instant. He was allowed to suffer, to slowly waste away, before being discarded like trash in that suitcase. Dejaune and Dawn had not only abandoned him, they had watched him die, helpless and alone.
So far, police have made one arrest.
And I'm doing manifestation alignments for $100.
A self-described healer, Dawn Coleman, went live on Instagram or Facebook daily, where people paid for readings or asked her to speak with their ancestors. And in the background of this video, you can see the Las Vegas-style suitcase that ISP has pointed to for months.
We're hoping that that will jog somebody's memory to say, hey, I've seen that suitcase before.
It was the only clue we had for 6 months. And all along, it was sitting in the back of this Instagram Live, filmed in January. Police even reference it in their affidavit filed last week. And while Coleman is in custody tonight,
Dawn Coleman was arrested on October 19th, 2022 in California. It was a relief for those following the case, but Dejaune Anderson remained on the run, eluding authorities for almost 2 more years. The search for her was ongoing, and her whereabouts remained a mystery. Authorities had already charged her with neglect of a dependent resulting in death, and murder charges were pending, dependent on her capture. Dejaune had been out of reach, but as time passed, the police were determined to bring her to justice for what she had done to her innocent son. But in March 2024, nearly 2 years after she went on the run, Dejaune Anderson was finally apprehended in Arcadia, California. Dejaune was arrested on charges of murder, neglect, and obstruction of justice, each charge reflecting the horror of what she had done. In a courtroom far from the Indiana woods where her son had been discarded, Dawn Coleman stood before a judge. Dawn, who had been complicit in Cairo's death, decided to take a plea deal. She agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a 25-year prison sentence and 5 years of probation after serving her time. The deal also required her to testify against Dejaune. Dawn's testimony was gut-wrenching. She described the horrifying moment when she found Cairo dead in the bedroom of their home in Louisville, Kentucky. Cairo, face down on the bed, had been left to die. According to Dawn, it was Dejaune who had asked her for help, and Dawn admitted that she helped dispose of the body. She carried Cairo's body to the suitcase, and together with Dejaune, they discarded him in the woods. Dawn claimed she wasn't directly involved in the killing, but the fact that she was there, aiding in the cover-up, made her just as responsible for his suffering. However, the legal process didn't stop there. The trial for Dejaune Anderson is set to begin on October 7th, 2025, as Dejaune faces the weight of the charges for her role in Cairo's death. Her actions that led to the death of an innocent child will finally come under the scrutiny of the law. The community that had rallied together to hold a memorial for Cairo was forever impacted by the loss of this innocent child. Jeffrey Meredith, the man who had found Cairo's body in that suitcase, was particularly shaken. He had developed an emotional connection to the boy he had never met, and he couldn't help but feel a personal responsibility for the little boy who had been discarded without a name for so long. For Vincent Jordan, Cairo's father, the pain was unimaginable. He had been separated from his son for years, involved in a bitter custody battle with Dejaune that had prevented him from seeing his son. Vincent had been desperate to find Cairo and had no idea that his son was already lost to the world. When he finally received the call, it shattered him. Cairo's death was not just the loss of a child, it was the loss of the future they should have shared. And that brings us to the end of this case, a story so disturbing it leaves you questioning how many other children are suffering in silence.
They hate you. You're gonna die. I don't want to do this.